Hey everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be my Gameweek 18 team selection. Just a small caveat, unfortunately, because I'm just traveling these last few days, I will be recording this video before Fulham versus Nottingham Forest would have been played. However, we have already had a lot of information this game week, and I've made a lot of free transfers as well. I've used all 4 of my free transfers, so gone early. You know what else? But FPL Fran screams going early on a game week. But yeah, I think we've had huge information, which includes the Bruno injury, the Isak injury, which now is confirmed to be a leg break, I believe, from David Ornstein's reporting, and means several months out potentially. Going back, taking a step to Bruno, it seems like Amram has confirmed that he might be a couple games out. Clearly, Bruno will have scans. We will get more information on Bruno, but potentially not before this game week's deadline, because I think Amram's press conference might actually come post deadline. So it's really hard to say with this specific game week here, with the sort of Friday night deadline. But I think the main thing to think about is, who is your Bruno replacement? If you own Bruno, if you don't, I guess you're laughing. As well as, what do you actually think is the full impact of, let's say, Isak being out for this Liverpool team, and how does that change your view of FPL? To me, that was enough for me from an Isak perspective. Just watching the injury, I can't say that I am an armchair physio, but I think I did a little bit of armchair physioing when I went for Ekitike pretty early. But I left room for Semenyo to Cunha as a transfer. Now, the irony is, instead of doing Semenyo to Cunha as a transfer, I've locked in one different move this week. But that's me in terms of sort of my overarching thoughts for Game Week 18. For Game Week 17, just quickly recapping what kind of Game Week I had. I'm sharing my rank right now. It should be 8,000 at the time of the video. I believe my specific rank at this moment in time is like 7,300 or something like that, 7,340. But that's going to drop because Anderson has ownership. Wilson massively has ownership, and I'm sure he's going to hurt me too. So regardless of what happens in that, I'm probably, hopefully, going to stay in the top 10K, and that's a positive. For Game Week 17, I had 76 points. Hinkepie and Raya saving the day. Hinkepie being a differential, and Raya actually getting 7 points. So that's a new little ceiling for Raya, and he actually outscored Timber and Hinkepie, which is a positive. O'Reilly still not going too far. I think he's obviously quite highly owned now, but I think he's still relatively low owned in the grand scheme of things. Where you think about, okay, do a lot of engaged managers own O'Reilly? Sure, but a lot of people also own Nunez. A lot of people own Guardiola, and some people actually have gone into Turkey recently too. So I think having O'Reilly in place as someone who's a very solid attacking player and an absolutely nailed City defender is still a huge pro to me. Something that I prefer owning, for example, compared to, let's say, a Virgil at his price point. And Lacroix and Crystal Palace, I definitely got that. Well, I don't even know if I've gotten that 50-50 wrong, but I think taking the assumption that I've gotten 1 point from Lacroix, 2 points from Richards on the bench, and Anderson still yet to play. And I think Anderson's expectations are probably to get DEFCON in that match and maybe even a chance of getting a clean sheet. I'm not looking forward to watching, let's say, Fulham versus Nottingham Forest. I'm sure that's going to hurt me. But yeah, kind of going to cheer for Nottingham Forest in that game and see what happens, because I got that 50-50 call wrong. The clean sheet odds actually before the match, I believe, were tilted towards Fulham by 1%. And, we kind of rolled the dice there, and it hasn't gone quite well yet. As far as the midfield, Sobo dropped a stinker. Bruno, unfortunately, was barred from playing from an injury. Foden, Saka didn't do much. So a game week where, to be honest, for all intents and purposes, when you kind of look at the performance of my team, and that includes Thiago, who's done absolutely nothing as well, didn't even take a shot. Yeah, I mean, I can't really say that I expected a lot from this specific game week here. Foden sort of ends his run of, being extremely informed. Triple captaincy went well. I've seen a lot of bench boosts do well, so congratulations to people who bench boosted, and even I saw some crazy free hits, as I mentioned in my transfer plans video. But yeah, I think Sobo, I got him out of my team because I just really wanted to get Ekitike in the squad with the Isak injury, and with Sobo's suspension, kind of felt like if I wanted to keep a structure of, let's say, Semenyo, who would have been Cunha at the time in my mind, and then Foden plus Saka plus Bruno, I kind of thought that Sobo was quite disposable in the sense that I could probably just choose a 5 million midfielder, kind of like a Dewsbury Hall replacement, and I went for Enzo Lefebvre, who I feel like is basically Sunderland's version of Sobo, in a sense, where he's got pen share. sometimes plays in pretty good attacking positions, actually is kind of like an attacking midfielder for the team. And yeah, takes some set pieces as well. So Sobo is gone from my team. I might actually even look at bringing him back, and we'll talk about that in my sort of updated transfer plans in the latter segment of this video. But Thiago was also very hard to watch, and Haaland was Haaland. So that was kind of the review of the game week. I don't feel too bad about the bench order either. As I said, 50-50 was definitely for me Lacroix versus, let's say, or a Richards or Anderson. Didn't go well, but Krupi Jr. also didn't play too many minutes, so I don't think I felt bad about that. And yeah, that's pretty much Game Week 17. Let's just quickly roll on towards Game Week 18. Specifically looking at, let's say, some of the insights for this week with the Match Week predictions. So we're going to use 11FI's Match Week predictions. From a Game Week 18 perspective, I would say that it's clearly just a week where people are prioritizing first on a Liverpool transfer, but this is actually still a pretty good Arsenal game on paper. I think both for clean sheets and obviously goals. A pretty decent game in that it's a home game for Chelsea, but I'm not sure if, like, Villa's one of those teams where I think they've just gone undeniably hot. And now, of course, as we've mentioned, like the underlyings are kind of there as well. I'd love to just see how they match up versus Chelsea and Arsenal again. They've already matched up versus Arsenal once this season and done extremely well. So let's just see. But it is going to be at the Emirates in 2 matches. So I think that's going to be a pretty tough game for them. And yeah, I mean, the biggest test for them is just going to be if they want to be title contenders, I guess, to do really well within these 2 matches. And there's not much people can really say, even myself, dismissing the underlying stats of Aston Villa as a team, because, as I said, as of late, they've sort of backed up some of the numbers. As far as, let's say, a City, for example, this is probably a bad week on paper, mostly because it's an away game. I think Nottingham Forest have looked solid, at least at home, and I'm just kind of hoping that hopefully I get a clean sheet here from City, because it seems like it's pretty realistic within this match. Otherwise, there's nothing that really cries out as being too interesting for this game. I think it's actually a really good Crystal Palace game, to be quite honest, from a clean sheet perspective as well. Very, very good for Everton. So that's why a lot of people are moving into this Everton team to probably just give a soft upgrade on even, let's say, the Crystal Palace defense or a Leeds defense, for example, this week, that have decent numbers, but nowhere near the sort of level of an Everton. And that's pretty much it. I think, unfortunately, this week is one where you kind of are consolidating on some of the larger teams if you haven't already. And otherwise, it's sort of replacing key picks in FPL, like, for example, United pick, and kind of asking the question of, do you want to go into an attacker that plays versus Wolves at home, like Wirtz, or do you want to actually just go for someone like maybe Acuna, where the expectations for Game Week 18 aren't amazing, but it's still a home game, and actually United, generally speaking, have a pretty good fixture run regardless from a goals perspective. So that's kind of the main takeaway this week. I think in terms of sort of 50-50s and that sort of stuff, in terms of like clean sheets, I would say that this is a pretty good opportunity if you actually have, let's say, maybe, who knows, a Chelsea defender or a Crystal Palace defender to just simply play it as your third defender. Otherwise, it's just buy an Everton defender is my main takeaway here. On attack, I think that's always going to be player independent, so less sort of a team goals thing, but something to consider where it's like if you've been considering, let's say, going out of the Arsenal picks that you have in the midfield, I think with Bruno coming out of the game, suddenly like keeping my Arsenal picks has become a lot more enticing for myself. Even, for example, keeping my Semenyo this week with Bruno being out is something that I'm just going to do, just because Brentford away is not actually one of Bournemouth's worst fixtures. That's going to be Chelsea and Arsenal. So that's kind of my takeaway there. As far as how I'm going to line up my team for Game Week 19, or 18 rather, we are going into Keane, so I've done Lacroix to Keane as well. That means I'm going to play Ryan Hincapie as a double defense, O'Reilly and Keane. I've got good auto subs as well in case, I don't know, suddenly Gabriel is sprung into action here, which I think hopefully is unlikely, but is plausible. Richards would be my first auto sub, then Anderson. I'm still going to take Palace here, simply because I think they actually have a better game this time out as well. And West Ham have actually been building on some stuff, and Fulham, have not been impressive. I could change my mind after Nottingham Forest, but that's kind of where I'm at with my sort of first bench and second bench options. Krupi Jr. clearly third bench. Keane is someone that I was happily moving to from Lacroix, because I do think Crystal Palace defense is not something I need to keep. It's not something where every single week going on in the future, I felt like Crystal Palace defense was some sort of massive differential against the field, in the sense that they had good games. Like the Burnley game and the Wolves game has come and gone. So I don't really need to keep them now. I was quite happy that Lacroix actually rose as of late because that's why I chose to kind of use him as a cash cow. So I think my selling value for Lacroix was 5.1. I sold and bought into Michael Keane. We're hoping here that Michael Keane just plays versus Wolves at home. That's kind of the timeline that I want. And I'm kind of hoping that Branthwaite is just going to manage his fitness so that he comes back a little bit after that. In the midfield, as I said, I've done Sobo to Enzo Lefebvre. So that's kind of the move that I made. He's against Leeds at home, which I still think is a good game for Sunderland here, just because it's home versus away. Semenyo versus Brentford away is probably my worst midfield this week, I would say, on paper, just because Brentford are actually a pretty good defense at home. And although Semenyo has been sort of super hot as of late, it's not like Bournemouth have been that impressive overall as a team. Like their underlying stats are from an attacking point of view, have not sort of maintained the kind of level that they started the season off with. So that's kind of where I feel like Semenyo would have been a lovely sell this week. But with Bruno coming out of the game, I actually feel so much more comfortable actually going into keeping Semenyo this week and then actually just bidding him off a little bit later, maybe for Sobo potentially, or even Wirtz if I feel like I've missed the boat on Wirtz but still want to jump back in. Foden, Saka, Cunha are the players that I now have in my team, so that means that I've gone Bruno out to Cunha, which I don't think is early. I think Amram's comments hopefully are enough. I think the fact that he got subbed off at 45 minutes is enough. Yes, of course, we have the protective boot incident with Bruno, and we've been burnt before. But I think worst case scenario, I'll just bring Bruno back next week through Semenyo. I mean, it's not going to be the worst situation for me in the world to do that because I was planning to kind of have a structure where Bruno was going to be in my team. My team suddenly is not going to be hamstrung from that. So I think that's actually a small pro towards the Ekitike transfer where when I kind of think about my team, actually, I'm looking for someone to move Semenyo out of in Gameweek 19. So if Bruno suddenly dramatically recovers from a soft tissue injury, which Amram said would keep him a couple games out, and he's back, then fine, so be it. Foden is just going to be a hold for the foreseeable. One of the issues with the midfield landscape right now, I think, is that actually a lot of the picks that we've moved into don't have the most flattering of games. So I think the same thing applies to Bukayo Saka as well. But I'm certainly not going to use a free transfer against these picks, and I think holding them, I'd never feel bad about it. In the forward positions, I'm going Ekitike and Haaland. I've decided that I've had enough of watching Thiago. Maybe the problem is actually watching Brentford play, because when I don't watch them play, somehow Thiago just gets a lot of points. The irony is that I did start my Game Week 4 wildcard with Thiago, then I sold him after two blanks, and then he kind of went nuclear for a bit. But his underlying stats have never been that good. So when we kind of did the What We've Learned video for Game Week 17, I don't think we were suggesting that Thiago is one of the most game-breaking picks in the game. The reality is that Brentford had really good fixtures, so it just makes sense to back someone like Thiago who has perfect minutes during this period. However, we now have a new shiny new toy in Ekitike. You have a very significant Isak injury, which kind of enables Ekitike to play perfect minutes from here on out. So using that as a bit of a crutch, I've just used that as kind of like that sort of fire to let me go out of Thiago and go to Ekitike. And as I said, I've gone Lefebvre as a result of that. But he's also a very solid pick. So in my cheat sheet, you'll see players like Stack and Dewsbury Hall and Lefebvre up there all the time at that sort of price point. And I don't think my mind has really changed on any of those players. I think they're all very, very solid and pretty much just players that you should have that fit your rotation. In this week here, because Sobo was injured or rather suspended, I chose to go out of Sobo. And I've got a good player here that allows me to play 3-5-2, and I've got two defenders on the bench who are very solid. In terms of captaincy this week, something I've actually considered is maybe moving my captaincy towards Ekitike. The biggest question mark for this week for me is who's going to take penalties for Liverpool. I think more than likely McAllister should be taking penalties for this Liverpool team. I think Wirtz has an amount of pen share that could be tangible for this game. I think Ekitike does as well, but Ekitike's penalty taking record is actually really, really bad. So I think part of the reason why, for example, Ekitike doesn't seem like he's in the penalty picture frame is because of that historical record. Although I don't know if Slot's changed his mind on that. I don't know if he's going to reevaluate that. But end of the day, the biggest fixture gulf is probably Liverpool versus Wolves at home. Sure, Liverpool are missing a couple key players for this match, but I don't think that's going to really change my mind in terms of how bankable this fixture is. And it is still Haaland at the end of the day, which is why Haaland is currently my captain and Ekitike is currently my vice. As we sort of suggested in the What We Learned video too, Haaland is sort of at a meteoric pace. He hasn't really slowed down at all. Once again, congratulations to triple captains for West Ham at home. I think within most of my videos, we've always discussed that West Ham at home was probably the second best game plausible after Burnley at home. I know Wolves at home would have been nice, but that's kind of my main takeaway, where if you're kind of looking at teams to target still from a defensive perspective, I don't think much has really changed from that landscape. Like people probably have underrated Leeds too much. And Sunderland, but other than that, most of the defensive teams that we've been targeting, like a West Ham and a Burnley, are just fantastic. And Nottingham Forest are not really a team that we target from defense. It's just Holland's numbers are almost double of his peers or triple of his peers when it comes to non-pen data, and he also takes penalties. So yeah, I don't really know how I feel about captaining Ekitike at this moment in time. I think I'd almost need to feel like he's on pens to probably go there. But I would like to see what the market odds are too, when they come out in a few days' time, where hopefully Ekitike is actually very close to Holland. And maybe that would sort of pull me or push me to actually, pull the trigger on that sort of captaincy to compete against Holland, because Ekitike has clearly been very hot in form. But I think part of that is that he's been hot in form with some underlying numbers that are not, for example, remotely close to, let's say, the level of numbers of Holland. So you're almost relying on the argument here that Ekitike is an extremely positive finisher, and to be fair, like last season he was quite a distinctly negative finisher too. So I don't want to say that that's like a tried and tested argument, whereas players like Holland and Foden have multiple years of being positive finishers to kind of put that argument away. So that's kind of where my thoughts are in terms of captaincy. I think it's a risk piece as well, because I do know a lot of managers like just simply going against like what is the most common option. A lot of the transfers that I've made this week are to probably quite popular picks. But I think part of that too, like in an FPL landscape, is you kind of know that with a good team value, I think the way that I tend to play is I feel like I can get towards the popular picks a little bit sooner, a little bit um, easier than some other players. And unfortunately, with the Bruno coming out of the game, I don't think you actually need that much money to play really coherent, good FPL. And I'm looking forward to see like what moves later down the line in the future with the money banking that I have now, 1.6 million, that I can do. So something that I've been thinking about in terms of my transfer pass coming out of Game Week 18, as I said, is Semenyo to Sobo, because something I probably do need to prepare myself for is Gabriel will come back, which means that I have to spend the difference in money between Hincapie and Gabriel. Maybe, for example, someone like Branthwaite will come back, which means that I'll have to spend the difference in money between Keane and Tarkovsky. So whilst I really like these defenders, I need to leave some money in the bank for potential upgrades in the future. And I think I did this anyways. And like when I actually went for Hincapie and I actually made some of the Enzo Lefebvre type moves that I made when I wanted to go for XDK for his price rise, I actually left zero point 0.5 in the bank. And that zero point 0.5 in the bank was enough for me to go Semenyo to Cunha and to still do something like Hincapie to Tarkovsky. And I think with Hincapie potentially getting another price rise, that should get me Hincapie to Calafiori. Now I've got a lot more money in the bank and I can just go straight into Gabriel, which gives me a bit more comfort because I think he's a better long-term pick than some of the other Arsenal defenders as long as he's fit. And that's kind of where my thoughts are, right? So I don't think Sobo is like a must buy, but Sobo could be a buy next week too for Semenyo. If Bruno suddenly comes back to life, then I just go straight back into Bruno, and then I almost go back into some of the conundrums that I've been dealing with as of late. The only issue, I guess, is that I've sold my selling value on Bruno. So I believed I sold Bruno at 9.2, whereas he's 9.4 million at this moment in time. So I would probably require some Bruno price drops, which will probably happen, right? Him actually dropping in prices is almost guaranteed because people are not expecting him to play versus Newcastle at home. I think that's been confirmed already by Amarim. If he misses Wolves at home, then I mean that's obviously a completely different equation. He's just going to drop a lot in price, and when we buy back into players like Bruno in the future, we won't feel too bad about it at all in FPL, and we'll have enough money to do so. Later down the line, something I'm targeting right now is Palmer in Game Week 21. The only thing is that I think Cunha is the most obvious sort of pivot away from let's say a Palmer, and that would be specific. Well, sorry, not Game Week 21, but rather Game Week 22. So after Fulham versus Chelsea, I think it's so great to buy Chelsea versus Brentford in Game Week 22. That would have been, let's say, I think almost like a 2 week rest between 21 and 22. We can probably also see like how Palmer's minutes would have progressed in this really fixture dense period in December, at the end of it and the beginning of January, and then kind of ask the question of, do we think Palmer's minutes are going to be perfect? So yes, I've used a lot of free transfers in Game Week 18, but the idea would be in the future, hopefully my team is kind of insulated from moves unless there's major injuries, and maybe I'll have to take hits, but I don't think I do. In the short term, as I said, saving at least one free transfer a week to just do an upgrade for Hincapie or Keane in the distance is probably the only kind of thing that I need to be prepared for. And then when Palmer is available for me, I think that's the transfer that I'm aiming to do, even with one free transfer at the time. So, for example, with the amount of money I have in the bank, um, I think if I do a move like, let's say, Semenyo to Soboslai next week, with Sobo going to get another price drop and maybe Semenyo getting another price rise, that should be me carrying enough money in the bank to make Cunha to Palmer, a one free transfer move at any point in time in FPL. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And those are my game week 19 plus transfer plans as well, just to kind of round out the video. For my team selection, as I said, it's a 3-5-2 this week. I'm pretty excited to have an Everton player versus Burnley. I'm really excited to actually own Cunha because I've actually enjoyed owning Man United midfielders. I think that the key thing for someone like Cunha and why I've moved into him as a pick is you're investing into a team that's worse now, but that maybe individual players stand to benefit a little bit more. So if Cunha is on penalties, I think that's a plus. If Mount, for example, is on more set pieces, that's a plus towards his bow. And a lot of teams, to be honest, are hurt by injuries or hurt by AFCON. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we think that they're fundamentally, a team that's 5 to 10 spots in the table worse. And we'll see what happens because obviously Bruno is a fundamentally important player. And I've moved into Cunha now, hoping that he can kind of take up the reins and we'll see what happens. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Take care and goodbye.